everyone, I have some super fun and exciting news today, so I thought I would share that with you while I'm creating this card. And I'm using some products from the Stamp of Approval collection. It's a collection released by Catherine Pooler, who also runs Stamp Nation. And she has selected me to be a guest designer this summer on Stamp Nation, as well as for the next upcoming Stamp of Approval kit, so that's super exciting. I'm going to start creating this card. I'm using the Geometric Builders stamp set, and I'm going to stamp it with some Versamark ink, and I'm going to stamp it in a random pattern on my card's background here. I wanted to put a scrap piece of paper behind it though, because I knew that some of it would end up getting on my mat. So I'm just arranging it so that they fit interlockingly inside each other, and I'm going to stamp until I'm about halfway up the card in the Versamark. I'm going to be heat embossing this, and then we're going to be doing a drip watercolor technique. So once I'm finished this, I grabbed my tweezers and I added some embossing powder. I like to grab my tweezers because your fingerprints actually make the paper a little bit sticky, and the embossing powder will stick to your fingerprints. So I'm just heat embossing this now and melting all of the embossing powder onto the card, and now it's going to create a resist effect when I'm watercoloring. So I'm just going to put you in a little bit of fast mode here while I saturate my paper in with water. This is going to help my colors flow down the page when I'm adding the color. So I'm just going to start with some colors, and what's really cool about this technique is it's all going to blend together all on its own without any work from me. So I'm just adding some yellow, and I'm holding the cardstock upright. This is watercolor paper, by the way. That helps the colors move as well. And then I'm going to add some pink. Now you're just going to let the colors flow down the page towards the bottom, and if they need any help with moving, you might just want to add a little bit more water. It'll saturate the colors a little bit so they won't be as vibrant, but the colors will move a lot more easily down the page. And you'll notice that the colors are actually going in and out of the triangles and kind of making their own path on the paper. Lastly, I'm just going to add a little bit of purple and let that drip down the page, and then I'm just going to make my colors a little bit more vibrant by adding some more. Also, what I noticed, I had to go in, those bottom triangles weren't being reached by the color, so I had to go in and just add a little bit of color to those just by swatching over the inks, and still letting them drip though down the page. This is a really fun technique to try out, and you're never going to get the same look twice by doing this, so you can try it on with different patterns or different embossing resists, or just try it with watercolors themselves without any embossing, and you'll get a really fun look. My cardstock was a little bit messy at this point. After it had dried, I decided to grab my rectangle stitch die from Simon Says Stamp and run that through my Big Shot, and this just gave me a really finished look with a nice stitched edging around the border. And I attached that to a piece of white cardstock that measures 11 by 4 1/4 inches, and it's folded at 5.5 inches to make a top folding card. The last thing I just needed to do was add my sentiment to the card. Now I definitely need some birthday cards coming up for the next couple of weeks, so I decided to create a birthday card. And I stamped this a couple of times using my Misty because it's on watercolor textured paper. It doesn't stamp correctly the first time because it needs to be stamped a couple of times. It doesn't get into those really big creases. So I just cleaned off my stamp, and then I decided to add a little bit of embellishment to the card. I'm using some Nouveau drops. What these are essentially are enamel in a tube, and so instead of buying those expensive enamel bites, you can get a tube like this and make your own and let them dry on the card, and they'll adhere to the card. Or you can make some on your own in your spare time on a piece of plastic and then adhere them using some mini glue dots. So that's the end of today's card tutorial today. I hope you enjoyed it, and you'll join me in the next couple of weeks as I'm guest designing over at Stamp Nation as well as Stamp of Approval. You can check out my blog if you want to learn more about those things. If you're looking for any of the supplies listed below, you can check out the video description or on my blog. And lastly, if you want to check out my blog, click up at the top. If you want to subscribe to my channel, click on the subscribe button, or you can click on the moving videos to check out 2 other video tutorials that you might enjoy. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in a couple of days for another video.